The cost of housing has risen sharply in recent years, including for college students. Living in a dorm or renting an off campus apartment can be the single largest expense a student faces, even more than tuition. Laura Barone Lopez reports on how students are coping with the high cost of living and how some universities are responding. It's the first part of our fall series, Rethinking College.
Senior Adrian Aguilar is studying civil engineering. But one of the biggest stressors during his time at the University of Texas at Austin has not been academics. It's how much he has to pay in rent.
When you left home to go to college, did you ever expect to have to worry this much about housing?
Not at all. I didn't think that it was customary for each person to be paying over $1,000 for decent apartments. I just didn't know.
Aguilar was raised in a rural city south of Houston by parents who immigrated from Guatemala. He has scholarships and financial aid to cover tuition and gets some help from his parents. But it's never been enough to cover his rent.
I definitely need a job now to afford housing here, which it does eat it into my time, but that's just the reality of the situation.
Last year, Aguilar paid about $1,000 a month for a room in an off-campus apartment that had no natural light in the common areas. But it was walking distance to campus. This year, he's on the southeast side of Austin, paying about $200 less each month. He says it's far less depressing. But now, getting to class is a 20-minute drive, followed by a more than 30-minute walk.
And I'm lucky because the engineering center is the closest to the parking lots. So I can't imagine somebody who has classes more south of campus.
For more than a decade, Austin has been one of the fastest growing metro areas in the country. Though down from pandemic level highs, average rents are still 20% higher than they were 5 years ago.
Back when I was in school, that one building, the Castilian, was the only one still here. And you could actually see all the hills.
Jay Hartzell is the president of the University of Texas at Austin, and he acknowledges that housing is a major concern for students.
We are, in some ways, a huge beneficiary of the boom of Austin. I think we're part of that, but that growth has a cost, and we've seen prices go up.
At the University of Texas, the cost of tuition has actually fallen 16% over the last 5 years. But like many four-year public universities across the country, the cost of room and board is now higher than tuition for in-state students.
Tuition is so observable. People see it on a website. They are comparison shopping different universities to think about how much tuition is going to cost. But housing might be something they don't discover till later.
What do you think could alleviate some of the cost of housing?
I think, in some sense, as an economist, there's no substitute for more supply.
The university is building more housing. New graduate apartments are going up, and a 1,000-bed dorm for undergraduates is replacing an older, smaller one. But with less than 10,000 beds available for students on campus, the vast majority of UT's 42,000 undergraduates are in Austin's private housing market.
Generally, the thing that people are worried about is affordability.
Developers know that students are a vulnerable population, and because of that, there's a rise in rents every year.
Nimratha Thurkadam and Kayla Keelantonk are both undergraduates in UT's architecture program, and two of the leaders of the university's tenants union, which formed this past spring. The group successfully lobbied Austin to ban windowless bedrooms and is now hoping to be a long-term resource for students navigating housing at UT.
Do you think that the university has done enough?
When there are students living in windowless bedrooms, when there are students that are living in conditions with mold or being forced to move out early and find an attorney or find housing solutions themselves, it seems like there needs to be more of a responsibility taken on the university's side.
There are affordable options, and I think that students get overwhelmed and they don't know what to do and they want to rely on their university, but we're not being given enough resources.
We worry about our students' outcomes and work fiercely on their behalf, but we also realize that we are in this big city with a lot of different kinds of providers of housing, and it's going to be up to, in many ways, the city to figure out how to regulate all of that.
The cost of housing in growing Austin is not unique. Nationally, nearly 1 in 2 students experience some form of housing insecurity, according to surveys from the Hope Center at Temple University.
We see this housing crisis that exists across our country, but it's rendered 1 in 12 students experiencing homelessness.
Mark Hulsman is the center's director of policy and advocacy.
Most students are not the 18-year-old coming straight from high school onto campus, living on campus. Most students are commuter students. They're working sometimes full-time while enrolled in college, and these students are often on their own, and they're often on their own without the support of the federal government and without the support of sufficient financial aid.
Pell Grants, which are the largest federal support for low-income college students, can be used for non-tuition expenses like housing. But Hulsman says those grants only cover so much.
The Pell Grant's purchasing power covers less of the percentage of college costs than it ever has since its inception. So what that means is students are taking on greater debt, they're working longer hours, they're either putting themselves currently behind the 8 ball financially or in the future through higher debt.
25% of our student body are Pell Grant eligible.
At UT, President Jay Hartzell says the university has provided more financial support for student housing. In 2023, UT launched a new housing scholarship. This year, it's providing up to $2,300 a year for more than 3,000 middle and low-income students living on campus.
The goal is to use the aid as a tool to help students find it more affordable to live close to campus, because in our experience, students live closer do better.
Junior Ashanti Meredith is one of those scholarship recipients. Originally from Dallas, the cost of housing at UT caught her by surprise.
Nothing could prepare me for how much I would have had to pay just for housing alone.
Meredith is a chemistry major and an aspiring doctor who has lived on campus all 3 years. Even though financial aid covers her tuition and some of her housing, coming up with the balance meant taking out loans and getting a job. But for the last 2 years, she's gotten a financial boost from the university scholarship.
I was ecstatic because it really helped reduce the amount of loans I would have to take out to pay for my housing, and allowed me to just focus 100% of my time on just my academics and not having to worry when the next bill is due.
Despite high rent, Meredith has no regrets about attending UT, a sentiment echoed by senior Adrian Aguilar. But he says the cost of housing is weighing heavily on what he might do after graduation.
Austin, it is a nice city, but I don't really want to worry about losing another $1,000 a month every month minimum. Going back home and living with my parents is a very tempting idea.
A decision driven by housing costs that could affect the vibrancy of Austin. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Laura Barone Lopez on the campus of UT Austin.